Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Overall, we had a bunch of new highs this week. Monday we had new highs. The US dollar rose significantly as well. Tuesday and Wednesday we had new highs. The latest data is pointing to a resilient economy and also a more optimism. I've been telling you about this where, this back and forth with the Brexit or the elections in England and the trade war information. I prefer to just kind of avoid all that. We mentioned it a few times, but until there's actually a deal, I'm just not going to mention it. So let me know if you guys agree. I think it's better that way. That way we can get into other good stuff. But the part of the reason why we got new highs is because investors were optimistic about the resolution of the prolonged U.S.-China trade war. If I'm not mistaken, it's been 16 months. The Dow has gone on for a 100th record close and 101 on Wednesday. Those are under President Trump, which is now above 28,000. And weaker statistics from China are leading analysts to predict that the world's second largest economy may want to move forward with the phase one, quote unquote, trade deal. Because even though the U.S. has been resilient, China is actually being affected in a negative way from the actual trade war. And one of the things that I think a lot of people aren't talking about as well is the structural change that's going to happen to China's economy. There's a lot of companies now that are actually deciding to move their entire production lines away from China. So a lot of companies are there, Apple, for example, Nike, all kinds of companies, and a lot of them are actually moving them to Vietnam. So that's going to have a long-term effect, not just a short-term effect, but a long-term effect on China. And one of the things that you guys may not know about China, the Chinese people have essentially sacrificed their, I don't know how to phrase this the best way in English. They basically have, let's put it this way, they basically have accepted the way things are as long as there's continued economic growth. Let's put it that way, right? As you can see, there's riots right now in Chile, in Colombia, in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, in Georgia, in the United States as well, demanding for change, hoorah. But the Chinese people have said, well, okay, we'll jive, we'll do this, but we need to see economic growth. So as China starts to have problems economically, they may actually have other sets of problems that arise because the people of China probably aren't going to continue to live the same way or accept the way things are now unless there's continued economic growth. Just so you guys know kind of the dynamic out there in China. Other than that, U.S. stocks are higher on Friday as Trump signs a bill supporting Hong Kong protesters. This obviously angered China, might complicate the trade talks. Overall, the U.S. markets are higher for the week. The Dow's up 0.63%, the S&P 500 is up 1%, and the NASDAQ 1.70%. In overseas market news, world stocks hit their highest level in near 2 years on Tuesdays, with new records in sight, more than anything because of the progressing negotiations between the U.S. and China. In Latin American markets, the Santiago index was down 4.21%. The Merval in Argentina was up, the biggest winner, in 2.71%. It's a real shame what's going on right now in Chile due to the fact that Chile has always been the beaming light, let's say, of Latin America, where they've had stability, economic growth, not a lot of situations that would leave you to doubt things in Chile. They're the only first world nation in the entire Latin American region, and also one of the only countries in all of Latin America that can come to the U.S. without a visa. Everybody else, they need to get a visa beforehand. And now, in my opinion, obviously there's always things that can be fixed, right? In the United States as well. It's a great country. Me traveling around the world, I still think the U.S. is the best country in the world with the best opportunity. But there's obviously things that can improve, right? There's always good things and bad things. In Chile, unfortunately now, I think that a lot of the protests are harming the country rather than actually the things that they just wanted to change. So, the peso, the Chilean peso has gone down by record amounts, the new record lows. It's a big problem. And European markets are mostly higher as well. Most winners are under 1%. The biggest losers was Russia and the Euro stocks, again, mostly under 1%. And African and Middle Eastern markets, mostly lower. Saudi Arabia, biggest loser, 2.67% negative. And in the Far East and Asia, the biggest loser was 2.24%. Australia was up 1.92%, with the Philippines down 1.11% for all the traders that listen now in the Philippines. Bitcoin currency plunged 10% overnight to below 6,600 to a 6-month low this week, and went down 30% in a month as the crackdown in crypto operations in China continue. One interesting thing that happened in China this week was the fact that a CEO from a crypto exchange just disappeared, and the exchange actually halted any deposits or withdrawals. I think it's a bit ironic when everybody says how secure your money is when you guys invest in Bitcoin, and nobody's allowed to take their money out. Guess what? I can take my money out from a bank. So I know I'm being sarcastic, right? But it's I just think it's funny because this is what I've been saying for a long, long time. Can it exist? Is it going to go up and down? Yeah, sure. But I don't think this is going to be what everybody thinks it is, right? And obviously, this isn't the year that it's going to get to 50,000 either. So sorry, guys. Other than that, Bitcoin is higher for the week, 8.81% to 7,707.1 cents. Financial and banking news: the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are engaging about possible creation of a cross-national digital money to be able to reduce the dependency on the dollar and U.S. dollar diplomacy. Now, this is definitely a threat to the USD financial preeminence. But one of the things that I think is also pointed out here, something that I mentioned to you guys, blockchain, which is the technology that crypto uses, I believe will revolutionize the world. And you guys can see here, they're not going out and using Bitcoin. They're literally using the blockchain technology as what some consider distributed ledger technology. And they're creating a digital money on top of that, which is what cryptos are, right? Bitcoin uses blockchain, and then everybody says blockchain, or says cryptos, I should say, and they're actually two separate pieces. So you guys can see even here what happens, for example, when this, the conspiracy theories, the new world currency is government coin, and all other cryptocurrencies are illegal kind of thing. See what I mean? That's the only problem that I see in the long term with Bitcoin. Other than that, Venezuela's government and the state oil-run oil company called PDVSA, which is technically PD Venezuela, but not that you guys speak any Spanish. They're offering to pay suppliers and contractors out in accounts in China using yuan, and by trying to get around U.S. sanctions. Obviously, the whole intention of the U.S. sanctions for the U.S. was to be able to remove Maduro from power due to the fact that he's not, there's people starving and stuff in Venezuela. I still have family there. Crude oil down for the week, 4.71 for U.S. crude. International Brent down 4.79%. Oil prices are predicted to remain lower in 2020 due to the economic concerns and also the glut of crude. The U.S. became a net petroleum exporter for the first time in 70 years. So more than anything, the U.S. has been producing an insane amount of oil, and that's also leaving little optimism for an OPEC meeting, because a lot of the OPEC and their allies are averse to deepening their output cuts when there's so much higher output from other places like the United States, for example. Poorest weekly performance since early October for crude. Oil this week, 0.20%, silver 0.29% positive. In political news, pro-democracy forces won 86% of the seats in Hong Kong's local district councils. Pro-government camps only won about 12% versus 65% 4 years ago. So this is going to put a lot more pressure on officials to deal with the protesters. And there's also thousands of protesters that blocked entrances to parliament in Georgia's capital of Tbilisi on Monday. So not only overseas, but also the U.S., things are starting to rumble. Other than that, economic news and a setback for AMLO. Mexico's economy entered in a mild recession in the first half of 2019. A lot of investors are worried about some of the decisions that he is making. Peru is cutting regulation for about $29 billion in infrastructure spending to be able to revive public investment and stimulate the economy. The GDP in Peru is but it's forecasted to be at an expansion of 2.7%, even though this is the third reduction of the projected outcome so far this year. Brazil's unemployment rate fell to 11.6% in the 3 months through October, lowest level this year, and a sign that slack in the labor market may gradually be shrinking. So things might be getting better in Brazil. And India's GDP grew by 4.5% in quarter three, lowest level since early 2013. Even though the GDP growth was expected to be 7% last year and 5% in the previous quarter. Economic growth has now fallen for 6 consecutive quarters. You guys can see the trends, right? The trend might not be like, going down off a cliff, but, the trend is very, very, very slowly going down. Charles Schwab, unfortunately, is going to buy TD Ameritrade in a $26 billion all-stock deal. It's going to be expected to close in the second half of 2020. It's going to create a real giant in wealth management, huge industry consolidation. One of the reasons why this happened and was expected due to the fact that a lot of these discount brokers are actually taking away commissions altogether. So a lot of investors were worried about, where are you guys making your money from? So by combining, it creates these huge companies, they reduce costs, and they're able to actually make more money. I personally don't like it due to the fact that I just don't think these big conglomerates are good for us, the consumers in this scenario. I actually used to have Scottrade, then TD Ameritrade bought Scottrade, and now Charles Schwab bought TD Ameritrade. So I prefer kind of the more boutique, smaller firms. You get better service, lower prices, things like that. Xiaomi, which is the Chinese-made telecommunications firm, will reach $7.6 billion in revenue in quarter three with a net profit of just over $350 million. And Chinese Alibaba is up 5.3% in Hong Kong after the secondary market IPO this week. In technology, projections for the Institute of Energy, Economic and Financial Analysis, solar and wind power are growing so rapidly that for the first time ever, it's going to be bigger than coal. Obviously, this has to do a lot to do with environmental concerns, aging plants and competition, and it's caused a huge decline in coal usage in the U.S. The U.S. is likely going to get this situation when we have more power from renewables than coal in 2021. In investment news, Amazon formally files a lawsuit against the United States military for choosing Microsoft, their rival, for the huge $10 billion cloud computing contract called JEDI. Amazon insists an unmistakable government bias. Novartis is paying $9.7 billion for cholesterol drug maker The Medicines Co. to be able to build up their competition. And Germany, this is actually really interesting. Germany is creating a committee to be able to step in quickly to protect companies against foreign takeovers. They're going to try to preserve the manufacturing base that they've created, which has brought a lot of the a lot of the wealth to the country. And obviously they're going to be given special powers and things like that, but that's really interesting. I think it's something that most countries are going to have to do over time because China really is not going to stop growing, right? Eventually they're going to be the largest economy in the world with 1 billion people. Other than that, in international events, man stabbed 5 people, killing 2 on the London Bridge before the police shot him dead. He was actually released from prison after being convicted for tourism offenses. And ahead of the December election, which this is actually favors the Prime Minister Johnson. And in unusual facts this week, Christine Lagarde, which is the new head of the ECB, calls it a mission-critical priority, pushing for climate change to be part of the ECB purpose in the first comprehensive review of the bank since 2003. A lot of the other Eurozone central bankers are arguing that climate change should go to the national governments through fiscal policy, not necessarily monetary policy. Warren Buffett made a recent takeover offer for software and hardware distributor Tech Data, only to be topped by a private equity firm called Apollo Global Management. And Disney's new movie Frozen 2 brought in $127 million in the US, $350 million worldwide, resulting in the highest grossing debut ever for any animated film globally, and it's the largest opening ever for Walt Disney. This is most likely going to be Disney's sixth $1 billion box office in 2019. And also Disney Plus, the new streaming service from Disney, definitely is starting to go, it's going to start competing with Netflix, or I should say Netflix definitely has a competitor now. It's been downloaded 15.5 million times in less than 2 weeks since the launch, and they're adding about 1 million new subscriptions per day. Apptopia is the one responsible for reporting those numbers. And other than that, another interesting thing this week, thieves smashed display cases and grabbed priceless jewels from the Eastern German Museum on Monday. They forced their way into Dresden's Grünes-Gewölbe, or the Green Vault Museum, and they got away with 3 sets of early 18th century jewelry, diamonds and rubies. It's a raid on one of Europe's greatest collections of treasures, and it's valued at over $1 billion. They unfortunately wasn't insured. Do you guys hear that? Wah, wah, wah. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. See you next week.